disrupting traditional ERP implementations with AI-driven workflow innovation.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, John Kuntz, and welcome to this edition of the Disruptor Podcast. For those that are new to our show, the Disruptor series is your blueprint for groundbreaking innovation. We started this podcast in December of 2022 as a periodic segment of the Apex podcast. Our vision was to go beyond conventional wisdom by confronting the status quo, exposing the raw power of disruptive thinking. Today, we will be talking with the founder of Flaire Software as we explore how organizations are optimizing their operations without investing in traditional ERP systems and how AI is making all that possible. Welcome to the show, Harish. Glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your background from cloud security to Bloomberg and MongoDB, and what led you to start Flaire Software.
I started at Johns Hopkins for cloud security. It was really amazing, right? But I also noticed that a lot of my friends went on to go and start some of the amazing companies out there. At the time, entrepreneur journey was not suitable for me due to personal reasons. But that's when I joined Bloomberg. One of the things while coming out of cloud security at Hopkins, for me that stood out is that I never wanted to be a consultant. I always wanted to build and I wanted to be a developer. So I joined Bloomberg. When I joined Bloomberg, they said hey, there is this niche field where you build authentication system, you build the encryption systems. So you need the security knowledge, but you are a software engineer. So that's how the journey at Bloomberg started. From there, MongoDB Atlas just came out and they were trying to hire someone for security so that they can start building the security team. And that led to MongoDB. Again, the theme was pretty much the same, building products over saying that I'm an expert in something, I guess. So I joined them as a security engineer. I moved around different teams based on what team needed some security expertise. That means I got the breadth of knowledge. I got to build products for different teams, which led me to be joining as a lead engineer for one of their core Atlas cloud team. And during those few years as a lead, as an on-call person, I also observed how data is being used by my customers. And some of our biggest customers are in retail. So that made me more and more curious on how data is being used in the retail industry and why that's a big thing in retail industry. And obviously, when I looked at NetSuite, Oracle being the biggest player in an ERP industry, made me even more curious. It's a database company. Why are they shedding so much money in this industry? That's kind of my curiosity around the industry. The way Flaire started was that I was in this shop called ONS in Soho, New York, downtown. I was observing how they were operating. I was talking to their founders. I sat in some of their team meetings. And the more I observed, it felt like back office of fashion is a workflow and data problem. When we think about fashion has a lot of technical softwares involved in it. Starting, which is a little more obvious to everyone, is design. Because you kind of try to figure out what is the embroidery, how bunch of different embroidery styles can get to put together and visually how it looks before production. The moment that happens, then the process of procurement, ordering, negotiating different factories, figuring out how to order, how much cash you are committing to different products. All those complexity comes into place, and that's where ERP lifecycle begins. You can think of ERP as something that brings various moving parts inside a company together. So the first part I talked about how ERP brings the data from the design team into production lifecycle. The ERP, again, once the product is received, is the one that pushes and helps maintain your inventories and then listed in different websites, Shopify, Amazon, or whatever it is. And final piece is you make an order in your website, then ERP again comes into play on making sure your order goes to warehouse and warehouse ships it properly. And then you get back the tracking number. So ERP plays a very crucial role in your whole workflow and how data moves, even to place a single order in someone's website. And that made me more curious, and coming from a data background, having built a lot of data products, I felt this area is ripe for innovation. And some of the questions you usually ask, like, I was happy at MongoDB, I was happy at Bloomberg. So the first question you always ask, like, if I want to do this, why I want to do this? My question always was like, Shopify has done a tremendous job of e-commerce, especially when it comes to sales platform. And I kind of don't want to do something over there because when someone has done a great job, I know I cannot, as a single person, as a startup, do a better job than Shopify. Oracle has done a great job for bigger industries, 100 plus million brand who needs like a lot of engineers, customizations. Yes, I am not going to disrupt that industry, at least on day one. But then I also realized that there is like SMB market who can't spend that much on software engineering, but can a lot out of data by bringing in innovation in this field. And that's what led me to start Flaire.
One of the things I love about this podcast is I interview people that have these backstories that sort of go weaving around and eventually they get to where they are today. That's fascinating. And it's cool that you kept building upon your knowledge and your desire to figure out how things work on the back. So describe to me, Flaire, you sort of went into this a little bit, but describe to me the way you use your software to avoid this traditional ERP systems. Because as we know, as you mentioned, I mean, ERPs for large enterprises is hugely expensive. It's uber time consuming. And it's also, once you're in, you're sort of locked in, right? So if you go down the Oracle path, the switching costs are huge once you implement certainly from my experience in the larger enterprises. Talk a little bit about what kind of mistakes you see organizations making when they try to scale with traditional ERP platform.
So I'm going to kind of spread it out. At the beginning, I'm going to start about how Flaire came up in terms of innovation and make it easy. But obviously over the 2 years with AI and everything, what we are building as well, like how I see the industry keeps evolving. That's one of the important thing, right? You need to keep up with the industry and bring in that innovation. Let me start with where I started and why it was very useful for my customers to commit to us and even do the migration. You are right. Doing an ERP migration is a big step, and trusting a startup to do that is like even bigger step. Our customers like Alala, RTA3, all of them are like 30, 50 million brands, not like a new shop that came up. So this is how it started, right? One of the things I noticed when I was in back office is that people see each of your dress and want to analyze whether to buy it, whether to replenish it in a different, if it's a t-shirt, it's just size and color. So you want to see which color is moving fast, which size I need to order more, which size I need to order more for New York versus a Texas. Whereas when you come to female athletic wear, then it becomes more complicated. You have cup size, you have torso length, you have color and the regular sizes. So now you are looking even more matrices to make your plan, to do analysis around what is selling fast, what is not selling fast. For my next season, what I have to do. So that's where the attribution came into play. And that was one of the biggest reason people are moving. In traditional ERPs, even in like Suite, if you want these custom attribution, you need to pay for a software engineer, you need to customize it. And when I looked at it, for me, it just felt like an extension to MongoDB. In typical database, you think of primitives as numbers and your alphanumeric characters. But when I speak more to these vertical specific industries, color, for example, it's like a primitive data type to them. Barcodes, which you see at the top, it's like a primitive data types. So what I ended up doing is like extending MongoDB's functionalities to include these primitive types, which each of the brands. And from there, we built a schemaless ERP. That means we don't charge people for customization. You come to us and say, hey, this is exactly how I look at my business. These are the properties I want to be tracking for my clothes. And we set them up. That was compelling enough for them. They were willing to take the risk to do the data actions. That's pretty much the reason why people started. And kind of like, it's important that when you are in your business, you get to make decisions that makes your business better and not change yourself for the software that's available, software that's cheaper. That's first one. Second one, we did started it as fully apparel specific. And even if you are not in Shopify, we were building it. But the more I started building it, the more I noticed is that unlike traditional ERP, we could tightly couple with Shopify. Shopify has done a tremendous job of exposing APIs. And whatever Shopify does well, I don't want to repeat. I just want to pass on that load to Shopify. What this meant at the end of the day for my customers is that we end up being something like a Shopify app once we migrate to us for another migration, or if you want to use another new software, you can use any of the software in Shopify app ecosystem. You don't want to. ERP never becomes a bottleneck for you to try different apps, marketing apps, offer apps, bundles apps. Whereas with traditional ERP, when you want to add a new app, because ERP is not tightly coupled with Shopify, then your ERP needs to support those integrations. So that means you are not nimble, you are not fast. And let's be honest, not every ERP can build an ecosystem that Shopify has, build the amount of apps that Shopify has. And that's the other part of how I see that we could build something that's different while giving users the power and bigger functionalities.
So in a nutshell, I think what you're trying to say is you're sort of bringing together I call it the back office and the front office, right? So the back office is all the ERP, traditional inventory management and orders and all that stuff that goes in the back end. The buyer, right, never really sees that. They see the front end, which is the Shopify. And so you're bringing both of those together, I think, and that's probably the mistake I'm hearing that maybe organizations might make.
Absolutely right. Traditional ERPs used to replicate whatever data is in Shopify as well in the back office. That is disconnects and everything. We try to be like, let's bring things together because it's a single stack. Why are you thinking us each and everything is very different?
Which sort of leads us into the next question we were talking about in the prep meeting was this whole idea of workflow optimization, a better path forward. So what does that really mean in practice for, let's say, a small or mid-sized organization that you might be working with?
Yes. So in terms of workflow optimizations, a lot of people have very custom workflows. Some of them print labels. For some of them, warehouse prints label. And each and everyone look, even the headcounts they have, the type of people they have, as business evolves is very different, especially the bigger the business. Once you cross the 10, 15 million mark, now you have an operation person and you have a production person who is different from an operation person. Now you have a customer service person who is different from these people. How do you bring everyone together? One of the things that AI has done a really great job is being able to build these integrations based on various tooling you use, various workflow you have, the customizations at the top. At the beginning, I usually tell people to change their workflow so that you adapt to the software and be more efficient. But in the last 6 months to 8 months, especially when people come and say, hey, this is my workflow, I need this customization, I was able to go back and build it in 2 days. Just like the smaller changes and workflow optimizations. And that's how I also see things evolving moving forward and being able to build these little more in a nimble, agile and quicker way that you can actually go to people and say, this is my workflow, this is my business context. And engineers come up with the software that adopts to your workflow and your business context. And you don't have to pay 100,000, 200,000 for implementation.
That makes sense. In the old days, you would try to avoid customizations, correct? Because every time you did an upgrade, every time you made a change, the custom integrations were always what held people from moving from one version of enterprise software to another. So I'm starting to hear that AI is allowing you to do that quickly. Therefore, you can bring the both worlds together. You could quickly deploy customizations that aren't going to necessarily bite you in the backside in the future when you have to make upgrades or changes. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely right.
So walk us through a real life example of how that works.
For me, the real life example is SKU number generation. Everyone generates SKU number with some kind of custom logic. People were using spreadsheet to generate those SKU numbers. And I was able to just write a quick custom logic in the front end that says, hey, for this customer, this is how they create SKU numbers. Like if you have color red, that's number 48. If the cup size is C, then add C to the end. All those customizations now is so much easier that people don't need to manually do it. And you get your own specific things. Number one. Number two, for example, if you want, people use project management tools to create designs and everything. And the moment everything gets approved, they go to Shopify and then they create the product in Shopify. You don't need to do that. With AI, you can build a customization once in my project management tool, I am approved, directly just go and create the product in Shopify. So those kind of bigger customizations, it used to take a week because you need to know the APIs for Shopify. You need to know the APIs for these project management tools. AI makes it easy. Number two, we always think about product as all the edge cases. We need to fix some things. In fashion industry or in most of the vertical specific industry, people do the exact same workflow. You just need to make sure their day-to-day workflow works for these custom software and that. So that means testing is easier. Users comes your testers, they're happy, and you get all these kind of workflow automations in a matter of days.
That leads me to the following question. In your experience, your clients or your customers, do they understand their workflow in the beginning, or is that part of the upfront process? Because what I've been reading and listening to and observing and even experiencing is AI is super powerful, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to really take the time and understand what your workflow is. I mean, you can't automate something if you don't know what it is. Is that making sense? Is that right?
It's absolutely right. It's one of the places where I use AI to make myself more better at sales. So one of the things I do is like exercise I do in the first call is ask them, explain to me purely in business terms. Don't explain to me how people use your ERP. I don't want to hear that. From business terms, explain me what people you have and what is the functionality for each one. And then I feed it to Anthropic, which gives me a really nice Mermaid.js workflow chart. Then I sit with my customers and be like, this is a very visual workflow chart. This is what I understood from you. Can you validate? This is how your business operates. Then it becomes more easy to say them how my software fit into their workflows.
So I love that for actually two reasons. One is what you're describing to me is something I would call you're co-creating with your client or your prospect. So you're trying to understand their business probably better than they may understand it. I know when I've done this, a lot of times I've laid stuff out like that and the client looks at me and goes, wow, I never knew that before. I don't even know that about ourselves and I work here every day. And now it also allows you to follow up with them, correct? And start to build that relationship. One thing hasn't changed in the last 40 years that I've been selling is people still buy from people they trust, especially if you're new, you're an entrepreneur, you've got a startup, whatever. But it doesn't matter. You can be a large or small company. At the end of the day, they got to look at you in the eye and say, hey, Harish, I believe you can help me. And you don't do that just by sending them a bunch of emails or just assuming you know what they're doing. I think that's great. Let's circle back on the AI play. AI is effectively being used what you do without over-promising what you can do. I mean, you described a little bit about it in the pre-sales, but over on the back end or through the course of the buyer's journey and ultimately the implementation of your software.
So one of the things that was very important, even as a CTO and founder, is to keep an eye out of which evolution of AI is production ready versus which is not. We hear a lot about agents, how agents can do everything for you in production. But think of someone getting an invoice, keying the invoice in to make the payment. If an agent is doing it, if it makes a mistake, then the repercussions are big. You're not paying the right amount, your books doesn't tally, then you need to go through like thousands of invoices to do it. But so agents is not there for that specific use case. Whereas that use case where, example, some people in our industry miss emails that says purchase order is getting delayed. I could easily parse every email that comes in when I feel something seems to be off for their manufacturing communication. I can flag that email at the top so that people can go and verify it. And AI is that. AI can do that really well. So understanding which part is hype and which is production ready is really important. And which is very critical to users is important. The second part is repeatability, right? A lot of times when I talk about invoice parsing or uploading your customer orders to understand how they operate, some of them needs to be repeatable and you need to be sure that when you repeat it, it will give you the exact same results. And AI doesn't do that. But what AI can do is if I use AI to build those customizations as an app, if I do it to build all the custom logics, then you can test it, deploy those custom logics in productions, you know that when you are using the product, it's not AI, it will go and give you the exact same results. Whether it's a SKU number generation, like I mentioned, or creating some custom PDF to send to your customers for invoicing. All those things, once you use AI to build it faster, you can use it in production. Agents, yes, email passing agents exist. If you come up with an invoice or we call it packing list in our industry, which comes like manufacturers and what item they are producing and how much. It used to be hundreds of lines. Someone manually used to enter those, key in those things in ERP. But now you can upload it, we pre-pass it, but we don't really enter the value, rather we ask someone to verify it. Now your job of keying in for 1 hour changes to a job of 5 minutes of verifying whether the past values are right. So that's how I see AI. And obviously a month from now, like you mentioned, if you ask me, maybe agents is there. I would say agent would do the whole thing. It's all the hype. You can sell a dream, but you also need to be understanding which is production ready, which can be used in real life today, and not just what is going to come.
Yeah, I'm glad you hit on agents because it drives me crazy, because if you watch the external marketing and newscasts or whatever, everybody's talking about agents. And as you mentioned, it's coming, but it's not the panacea, especially today. So great advice. So speaking of advice, tell us, as a founder, if there are any founders listening today, what advice would you give to them about building the right operational stack, particularly when it comes to technical? We're all overwhelmed with tech options these days.
Keep it simple. Pick things that you are really comfortable with. Even while working at MongoDB and stuff, while I see people how they use databases, my first thought is that unless you are like the Coinbase and Google of the world, the reality is it doesn't matter. Even if your query is 10 milliseconds slower, your users won't do it. So pick something that you are comfortable with. I mean, obviously this advice changes if you are building a product, but when you are building these innovations in ERP or these kind of very real world problems, trying out different ways, trying out different things helps people, needs a lot of iterations. So pick something that's so easy to you that you can iterate until you see a market fit. Then obviously you can just go back and upgrade everything.
That's great advice. I agree. I see people, especially in the technology space, just trying to create solutions purely on the technology. And what I really have picked up through the course of this conversation is you're really focusing on, which is what I advise all my salespeople to do, and the technical people that I advise, the product managers of the world and stuff like that, is really focus on the why. Why is what you're building important to ultimately your end user or your buyer or your customer or your client? And then build it quickly and simply, and then iterate over and over and over again.
Yes. One example I would usually give people is when I talk about email passing, I can make sure Google can tell me when a new email arrives, or I can just query every 10 minutes on whether this person has new emails. The later one is quick to build, not the most efficient way, but until you prove out that it's useful, just in the quickest way.
That's great. Yeah, it's a classic agile methodology or mantras. I like to say fail fast and cheaply, right? So build something, test it out. If it doesn't work, throw it out, pivot. If it works, great. If it needs to be better, make it better. All right, before we wrap up, switch a gear. What's something you've learned the hard way in your experience that has shaped you to run your business today?
Personally, I feel when I joined Hopkins, I had to take 2 jobs and the 5 grad courses. That means I kind of got so used to working long hours, and working long hours is very, very important as a founder at the beginning stages, because you need to find the product market fit quickly. So that experience definitely shaped that. And over the last 2 years, things I learned as founder is not saying yes to all the customers and being very pinpointed in the type of customers you want to onboard at the beginning. It's so exciting to get lost. I got lost where some people who are not in Shopify were I love this solution. I want to onboard, and I end up building a lot for them. But looking back, no, I don't have the resources. I don't have the money. Being laser focused on a small group, even though you can have a bigger vision, is so important.
I think that's great advice. I've seen that mistake that you avoided over and over again, where especially as a new company or a founder, is every prospect is a good deal. It takes a maturity level to say, no, we're not a good fit, right? And understand that you could get just sucked down a rat hole and blow all your cash on one client, and therefore have, in so many small early stage companies, it's not that they don't have good ideas. It doesn't mean they have bad management. It just, a lot of times they just run out of cash. And if you don't have cash, unfortunately, all the good things you do can't happen. All right, we'll wrap it up. I want to thank you for sharing all these insights and experiences. How can people learn more about you and your company and your services? Where do they go? What are your socials? What do you want to share with them?
I always tell people they can follow me in LinkedIn. I usually keep my LinkedIn updated. You will see what we are doing in the company in my LinkedIn, any thoughts I have in LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, you can obviously DM me and always happy to reply.
And of course, we will include those links in the show notes so you can check it out. You want to learn more or connect. And Harish, I'll give you the last word before we wrap up the show.
One of the things I would say is just have fun. If you're picking a software, any job, whatever it is, just experiment. Be bold.
That's awesome. All right, bud. Hey, I'm John Kuntz. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Disruptor Podcast. Have a great day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.